What is up, Team Eternal? Welcome to another EPL Eternal Logos podcast. It is a beautiful Sunday. We are in the studio with some very special guests. Hopefully everybody's had a fantastic couple of months or so. I think the last time I did a podcast was back in May. I'm slacking on my 2 times a month, but that's okay. We're in the studio now, and that's all that matters. Again, we have some special guests in the studio. We have the Hubers. We have the Huber twins, and we have Mary. It's always also a Huber, obviously. They're all sisters. This is a fantastic has been an opportunity to get to know them a little bit more. Me and Mary met some time ago in history. And since then, we kind of have been talking about having a podcast, and we reconnected and some other things. And I met her sisters at a dance event. They're dancers. We'll kind of get to that as well. But today's podcast is going to be Mary doing most of the talking. I told her, if you guys want to join in, for sure. So we mic'd them up. And so I'm sure they'll probably have some things to say here and there. They're singers. They're very talented. All three of these ladies are extremely talented. So when we plug the social media in a bit, make sure you tap in to their social medias and see what these ladies are up to. They're, like I said, absolutely talented and creative, and it's amazing. And so today we're going to do a podcast and talk a little bit about what Mary's going to introduce in a second. But before that, I don't necessarily have any announcements, I don't think. I can't think off the top of my head. Do I have anything? July 4th is coming up. Have a nice and happy July 4th.
Amen. Happy Independence.
And we are going to, so I've had people lined up, but just, schedules and things didn't work out. And so, but we do have people lined up. So make sure you tune in for that. As we always say, liking and subscriptions are optional. Commenting is mandatory. We always want to know what people are talking about, what people feel about the conversation. And we want you to tap in. We want you to give your authentic thoughts, talk about what your opinion is, talk about what you think is fact. And like we said, we're here to discover truth. And so that's what we're here to do today. So welcome to the podcast, ladies.
Thank
so
you.
Excited to have you. Thank you for coming all this way. Mary's going to introduce the topic, and Mary did a really good job. So I've been telling the people that on occasion, I try to get everybody to introduce the topic the day of. I think of 100% of people who have come on the podcast, maybe 10% have done it successfully. We always kind of have a conversation before, and we kind of did a little bit, but we didn't talk too much about it. And so, without further ado, Mary Huber, welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
I say, so what is the topic? And we'll plug your social media. We'll introduce everybody, give a chance to introduce yourself.
Yeah.
And then we'll go from there.
Well, spiritual fitness has been on my mind a lot lately, and kind of been appearing in little areas of my life too, just to kind of conflict with or contrast with what's going on in life right now in the world, and kind of how we were talking about earlier, how to navigate this changing landscape of society that's happening, and it's going to get crazier in the next couple of years, I feel, just to prepare for the tidal wave of AI, basically, and how to stay sane and remember what's real and what's not, and can we use AI for good? And pretty much
it's a
that.
very powerful topic there. So we're gonna have some fun.
I feel like we should be talking about it a lot, just because it's coming and it's going to be crazy. And I've been wondering, the way spiritual warfare can play a role in that. So
yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so you want to plug your social media? So your name and then.
well, I'm transitioning from digital art to traditional iconography. So I used to, I started off drawing traditionally and playing around with paints and stuff, but as I got into late high school, that's when I started doing digital art, and a lot of TV shows and movies were coming out, and nerdy things were starting to become more socially acceptable. It wasn't just Star Trek anymore or Star Wars. It was like the Marvel universe and Disney movies and DreamWorks movies, and that's what I wanted to do my career in. And now that the the well of inspiration from the secular world is kind of running dry. And I was just tired of looking at a screen all the time, especially as I got more health conscious and more conscious of like my eye health specifically. So going into traditional art made me more aware of how much AI had been robbing me of my technical skills. So a lot of the things that gave me joy with art, the computer was just doing it for me. So I kind of just felt like someone pushing buttons. And I didn't realize until later how much that was taking a toll on my mental health, my spiritual health, and even my physical health. Like one of the reasons I got into fitness to such a intense degree was because I was trying to like fix back pain and shoulder pain and like eye pain from just being hunched at a desk forever.
Yeah.
And once I started doing that, I was like, everything else kind of just fell into place where traditional painting just made me feel useful again. It made me feel human. Like, I don't remember what it was. There's this like phenomenon where the more humans use it's phenomenon. It's like the more we use our hands, like the happier we are. Yeah. So if you are just sitting at a computer all day forever, going home and like building a desk with your hands is like very good for you, obviously. So I think with AI coming and kind of taking all our jobs, I think that's like a positive thing in the long run. It's scary now, especially for people who are still in LA and have like children to feed. It's not easy to just say like, yeah, this is a good thing. But in the long run, I think this is a positive thing, which is what I want to kind of remind people. It's like, hey, you know, the world that we've been living in, we can all kind of agree has not been great for us, given the mental health and the physical health problems that we're having. So just kind of going from there.
Gotcha. Now that's a lot of interesting concepts you point out. Also, by the way,
exploring words.
Also, you'll probably have noticed, like Mary kind of hinted at when we talked about athletics. So we actually met in the gym. I think the last 3 people that have been on, 3 or 4 people that have been on the podcast, all met in the gym. It's a good place to meet people. So it's just a great place to, So it also, I think, also inspired the topic as well too. So, which is social media. You want to plug your social media?
Oh, I have a website, maryelizabethhuber.com.
Gotcha.
And then my Instagram is m.e.huber. That's it.
Perfect. All right. Allison, introduce yourself.
Hello,
Should be in the background, but we want to know who you are.
Yes, it's an honor to be in the flesh for this podcast. I'm very excited to see where the conversations go because these are some really cool brains. But I'm Allison. I'm also a Huber twin. I guess I'll plug my social media.
Yep.
At Huber Twins, Huber. You can think like Uber, but with an H. Twins on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, pretty much everywhere.
Nice.
And I'm specifically Allison Huber, but you know, you get the point.
Okay.
Leaves it to me. Veronica Huber, also a pleasure to be in this room and at the Eternal Logos podcast. Excited to be support or comedic relief if things get too serious and tense. Just throwing a weird sound. But yeah, since I'm the other half of Huber Twins, it's just clean and easy to say at Huber Twins or hubertwins.com.
Perfect. I don't know if you guys can feel their energy is amazing. Like all of their energy is amazing. It's
also we paid him a lot to say all those nice things at the beginning.
$20. Flipping the ceremonial hourglass. If we go over, perfectly fine, but that does.
I love
Mary
hourglasses
said she loved it,
so much.
Yeah, I was wondering actually.
I don't know why.
Side note, I was like, they have to go up to like years and like other hourglasses you can get at like intervals, but like apparently they're really like hard to find. Like they don't exist, or there's like only one that does like
really
like a year. I think I don't know if there's monthly or weekly ones, but
whoa,
I don't know. Fact check me on that. That's if you find them, send them my way. Send me a link. All right.
a year's worth of hourglass sand.
Yes, exactly. Which would be cool. Okay. All right. So you did mention something. That's spiritual athletics is sort of what you're kind of calling it. You mentioned AI and those things. As an artist, and I think for anybody out there who's an artist, and I know many of them, you said it. I know a lot of artists are fearing or have a fear of AI, like you mentioned, because of the possibility of taking jobs and those kinds of things, right? I do think that there is space for sure, because I think as an artist, and artists are all like, I marvel at what artists can do, just from their mind to paper. And so from that perspective, I have a healthy respect and a love and appreciation for artists and their ability to be able to do that. And then obviously there is the custom element, right? There's something right now that AI can't imitate, that I think is important always to remind artists and people who are creatives, especially with the, like you said, the uprise of AI and how people are fearing that. But to me, like I said, I think that there is space for sure for the custom element, the human element, right? And I think this would probably get us a little bit more into the spiritual, athletic part of the discussion.
Yeah.
You said it. You think it's a good thing. Can you go into a little more
Like
detail?
a good thing for it to be dismantled?
Well, what you were yeah, when you said good thing, what exactly did you mean? And then kind of going a little bit into why.
Well, so I'm not an AI scientist. I'm just an artist who's worked digitally and traditionally. So this is just kind of my perception. But it's still very much theory. But I am guessing that AI isn't going to last for very long. I feel like it's going to be kind of like a climax in the human story where we don't really have just any incentive to do anything anymore. So you can either be totally tuned into AI and let it dictate your life, or just cut it out clean turkey or cold turkey. And
Clean turkey works. Yeah.
I just feel that I don't see how society can possibly run for that long without it, because we're going to need to have, people are going to crave what's real soon.
Do you think it'll kind of force? Because I think if I look at the art landscape of all the artists, to also side note, there's something I forgot to do. Can you guys rapid fire your worldview?
My worldview?
Yeah, with your worldview, your belief system, your values. This is always something I like to start the podcast with, because I think it's very important.
I guess
yeah.
a Catholic with like Orthodox leanings.
Yeah.
So
Honestly, the first thing that came to mind was just like truth seeker, but rooted in Catholicism, I would say. That is a huge question. I feel like, at least at the phase of life I'm in now, it might be a seeker with a Christian base. I mean, Catholic roots and just the blueprint that Christ left behind, I feel like is the most harmonious future and life one could live.
Yeah.
So I would say just like following Christ's example, picking up your cross and fighting the good fight, but seeking always.
Yeah.
Nothing too strong politically, like things that produce life.
Yeah, those are really profound answers, which always a part two with the guests that come in. So we got to go through those, because that's really interesting. But I had to do that because that's definitely, I said that I would make sure we got that into the openings, but I forgot. Mistakes. So I think so. If you look at the art landscape, I think there are a lot of people out there who claim to be artists. I think this is an interesting discussion, one in and of itself for sure. Right? Like I think there are a lot of people out there who, obviously, art touches many mediums. It's fine art, it's digital art, it's graphic design. There's a lot of differences and nuances. And I think everyone in some sense can claim to be an artist, right? There's obviously music and there's dance and there's a lot of other things, right? A lot of people can claim to be artists, right? Because in some sense, art is subjective, right? But then there is the objective parts of the art, right? Like as a dancer, there's a following the rhythm, for instance, might be a principle. There should be some standard to say that's not a subjective component. Like you have to be able to follow the rhythm or the beat of the music or whatever it is. Yeah. If it's some different kind of art where it's maybe a little dance or it might be abstract, we might, okay, we have created a new parameter that can fit in, right? I think when it comes to like fine art or digital art, putting pen to paper, so to speak, right? There are a lot of people who might claim to be artists. And it's hard. It's like, well, not to say that they're not necessarily artists, but there should be parameters or standards.
They can't draw.
Right. Or they can't draw, or they don't know color theory.
They can't take an idea and portray it in a way that you can understand. So like
Right.
Jackson Pollock, for example, who I do not consider an artist, but you know, question mark. I think a lot of people would agree with that because you know, you look at his work and it's like the dismantling of the art is what he considers the art. But there's no story. It has nothing to do. It has everything to do with him, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like if you were like, I'm a musician. I'm like, okay, well, can you do piano chords? No. Can you like do you have any rhythm? No, you know?
Right. Exactly.
But if I hand you like a MacBook, you could probably put something together. So
Right.
I think that's why AI is able to take over so quickly is because we've been relying on it so much already.
Yeah.
And like I didn't realize how much I was using AI just by using Photoshop, technically, like
Right.
artificial intelligence.
Yeah,
Like it was
yeah.
color mixing for me, it was measuring for me, it was like erasing for me and undoing things. So I wasn't
Straight lines are a thing too.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
hard to draw
exactly.
a straight line. Yeah.
Whereas like if I do it physically with a ruler, it's like I'm solving my own problems and I build up confidence because building your art skills takes a lot of confidence because there is a lot of psychological warfare that goes on when you're an artist. And that's why I tell people like if you are not crying over your art, you are probably not an artist because being an artist it can be a terrible life. It is not easy. And that's why I really feel for a lot of these artists who are losing jobs right now to AI because it's so demoralizing because it's not just your job, it's like your identity. It's
Right.
like who you are as a person. And it's very you're very vulnerable when you put artwork out. It's like a revealing of your soul. And it's even worse when you feel like your art skill doesn't add up to where you are emotionally or spiritually. And that's
Right.
something I've had to come to terms with too. It's like I feel like my art isn't exactly where I would like it to be on an emotional, spiritual level, but I have to build up to that. That requires a lot of patience and,
Yeah.
you know.
Do you think, and this is where I think I'm going with the question, in terms of AI with respect to artists around the world, be it this or any other medium, do you think AI is going to force people to become, do you think it'll force the standards of art more, right? So if I'm claiming to be an artist, right, and AI can replace me very easily, right? Then do you
On a
think that
technical
will,
level, yeah. Like you will never be as good of an artist as AI because AI has access to the best of the best of the best and can just like collage it together. So on a technical level, yeah, there's really no point anymore. And I think that's what a lot of artists are waking up to is that they were more focused on skill or achievement versus actually art. And it's still, I'm still learning how to kind of talk about these
Verbalize
things
it,
because
yeah.
like when people are like, what is art? It's like, ugh. But
yeah.
like you could see an image that is super like someone made with crayons on a piece of cardboard and have more profound meaning out of that than like the most highly rendered like 3D model of a dragon that AI could throw together. It's like that's kind of what like in music it's like you could hear a song that's just some guy on a guitar and it could be the most beautiful like tear jerker ever versus like a big orchestral AI made piece that like sounds like an epic Halo
Right.
soundtrack.
Yep.
But there was no story. There was no, it's like, yeah, it was impressive how many pieces they were put in there and it seems like a big achievement, but it's like, what is it? You know?
Yeah.
Like what is it for? Is it just a depiction?
Right.
So I think that's what people are going to miss. They're going to notice that's missing in their life and want it back.
Yeah. And do you think AI will have a role in that by sort of forcing people to remember or go back to the sense or the essence of what art is intended to be as opposed to me just grabbing some crayons and drawing on my wall and be like, hey, art, right?
Yeah, I think it's going to get really hard to remember is the thing too, is we're going to first that's why I think spiritual fitness is so important because it's going to be really hard to tell, especially with a lot of this religious AI art where it looks like Jesus and it's a beautiful image, but there's something off. And it's, I think it's really important to have like a structured spiritual routine to kind of keep you centered and remember
Yeah.
who you are.
Do you think it will get people to draw back on canvas as opposed to digitally. Like people are like, "Go, not going to have my art.
I mean,
I'm
I hate
put it on the
saying
internet
that.
because then the AI will have access to my stuff."
Yeah, I don't want to sound like a puritanical, like, oh, you need to be like drawing traditionally and like actually learn how to draw, practice your hands, like, because I know that sounds kind of meh, but I don't know what the future holds based off of the trajectory that we see now. Like, I would say, like, yeah, just pick up an actual guitar and learn how to play, get into woodworking, get into pottery, like, use your hands, go outside, use your eyeballs.
Yeah.
Like, try to get away from screens as much as possible so that you can remember what's real. I just think of that movie, like, Ready Player One.
Yeah.
Like, don't try to defy that. Like, look outside as much as you can. So,
Then using your hands is interesting, right? Do you think that where do you think how do you think that relates to the thing you're saying about spiritual athleticism or spiritual, whatever the term you use? How the term do you use?
I guess it could be comparable to, like, the gym is really important.
Yeah.
But I think putting yourself in realistic situations is a way to reach fitness goals faster, at least in my experience. Like, the gym is a box, so your body kind of consents, like, oh, I am contained, I'm in a small spot, like there's only so much you can do, versus like when you go out for a walk and you're like, you have good posture, you're breathing, you're being stimulated by like the sounds of birds, the leaves, the air, and your body can just kind of relax and just naturally mold itself into the way it's meant to be. So you go into the gym every once in a while to like learn form, make sure that you're doing things correctly, and you can kind of regulate yourself. But ideally you would spend more time like out on a trail or doing body weight stuff, trying to put yourself in movements where you would be less prone to injury in real life. I think that's a good way to kind of compare it.
Yeah. And so I think that then there's an element that we haven't probably mentioned yet, but the role that AI art will play is more on the corporate side of things, right? Because it's the speed at which you can get a picture with AI is basically instantaneous, right?
It's a no-brainer financially.
Right.
Yeah, like why would you pay a bunch of artists like several $100,000 a year when you can wait months for it to be done versus getting it for free in like 5 seconds?
Yeah.
Like, duh.
Yeah.
Of course, I would fire everyone. I'd be like, oh, that profits. Yeah.
Right. And that, I mean, we did mention it because we said that's why people are scared of it, right? I think otherwise, if it
I
wasn't
think protesting is a waste of time at this point. Like, I see artists going like, hey, you're not listening to us. I'm like, come on, guys. Like, can you blame them? So, I don't know.
Yeah. But I think what you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, is like if you get back outside and you reconnect, this is the best thing you can do, because you'll reconnect with your spirit and your soul and bring back the essence of what art is.
Yeah.
Obviously, making sure that you understand the parameters and you do the work of understanding how to communicate, because I think that's probably the big piece, right? I think parameters around creativity are created because it accurately communicates something. It's not like if I was just simply made up a language and just spoke some gibberish to you, wouldn't understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm speaking, but I'm not saying anything, right? And I think understanding the parameters and respecting those parameters, those guidelines, color theory, rhythm, music theory, chords, right? It accurately communicates something in a legible way, in an understandable way, right? And so is that what you're saying? You're saying like if you reconnect, right, you do it with the integrity, then that's the best thing artists can do moving forward. In addition to, we'll recapture some of this spiritual athleticism that you're talking about.
And also like for any creative person, whether it's a musician or a painter, just kind of like we've been kind of brainwashed these past 20 years that you can still be a creative person and have like a normal job. Whereas every creative person is so unique and there's no like one size fits all approach to your career. So we were kind of all just following the same. We were approaching art careers in the same way someone would like approach like a medical career, an engineering career, like go to college, go to network parties, get a
interesting, yeah.
job,
Yeah.
get your 401k, get a house, and die. Whereas a creative career is just totally unique. And I think a lot of artists are afraid to kind of unplug from this toxic like parent that is corporate art jobs. I know I felt that way too. It's like I really wanted to have health insurance and things like that. But it kind of made us all the same. Like we're all competing against each other to be like the best of the best as far as like what is cool for like film and video games. But one of the blessings I think of AI taking over all of the corporate jobs and maybe in the entertainment industry is that we can kind of step back and think like, why did I even want to be an artist in the first place?
That's an interesting point.
You know, like what story can only I tell? Instead of like for a dancer, it's like, I'm going to work my booty off to be a backup dancer for Beyonce. And it's like, yeah, but why did you start dancing as a little kid?
Right.
You know, what gave you joy? And I think that's what people are going to really crave and miss. It's like people making art because they love it and not because they want to work for Disney or something.
Yeah.
So that's going to be, I think, something that is going to be very positive about AI.
I do think that that's a tremendous point, actually. I think that there's so much there because I think there's a value that comes attached with art and creativity that people relate to. And so if you as an artist can relate to the value that I hold, I see something in that obviously economically translates to money, right? And so it's very easy to get lost in that because it's like, well, if I value it and you're willing to provide it, and it's like, well, you should be compensated for providing me that value in this visual creative way. And so, like you said, in some sense, it's almost inevitable because everybody holds, right, I should get paid to do what I love, right? But if you miss the essence of, well, why'd you start doing it in the first place? Did you do it because you wanted to get paid? And to some degree, that does creep and permeate into the culture because it's like if you're a kid and you're going like, you can do this and get paid for it. And that kind of just like, okay, well, you start to put on that lens. And so you grow up developing this idea that I'm going to get paid to do what I love someday. But then the essence is lost. Right? That spiritual element is lost. So that's a really big topic. I think that, and it has to be said. I'm glad you said that because you blew my mind. And so I'm like, yeah, it's true.
I know. I was
so
like,
true.
I should unpack that later.
Yeah, exactly. So with that being the case, I think that's a interesting thing. The value that we have, that we hold inside, be it anything, any form of creativity. Do you think that, and you said the blessing of AI is taking over the economic, financial side of it and forcing people back to do it I think the music industry went through like auto-tune. When auto-tune first came out, it's like, okay, well, can you actually sing? Like, I feel like most people are just like, this person actually can't even sing.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? And so it kind of happened to the music world, but it hasn't stopped the creativity of music around the world, right?
Yeah, the human creative spirit will never be killed.
Yeah.
For sure, for real, yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think in essence is what people fear? Because there's the livelihood piece, right? It's like, oh, this will take away my livelihood and then I won't be able to eat. So that seems to be really obvious. But do you think that people fear something greater? Do you feel like there's something deeper in the fear that people are saying when they're, like AI is going to take over my job? Or
I think the thing that is the most fearful is AI just destroying the human will, like just losing that incentive to get up in the morning and change your circumstances. That is, if you look at it from a spiritual standpoint, like good versus evil, I think that is way more detrimental than anything else because that's like the destruction of the human soul. Like if you don't have any meaning at all, like if they do destroy the majority of professions and they're taken over by AI and maybe you have universal basic income and you have really no reason to leave the house because Amazon Prime and DoorDash or whatever and social credit score to keep you in line. That would be, I think, the biggest way to introduce Luciferian spirituality on a global scale. And that is what would be the worst, the most negative thing, to say the least. Because if you are fat and happy and have endless entertainment and really nothing to worry about, like that's when you have problems. So I think as a just by having this conversation right now, it's like figuring out like what can we do to combat that.
That is interesting too. So many different
That's why
ideas.
spiritual
It's
fitness,
so cool.
you got to keep your soul strong.
Yeah. So how, at this point in the conversation, how would you define spiritual fitness?
Well,
Maybe
this is something I'm working on myself.
I was about to say, somebody Googled it right now. It's like
I saw an amazing meme where it's like 3 hours a day of physical fitness, mental fitness, and spiritual fitness. So physical fitness being like martial arts, weightlifting, hiking, walking, just keeping your body alert or physically active. Mental fitness, reading, podcasts, debates, stuff like that. Yeah, just keeping yourself educated, even though we're done with school. It's like your education keeps going, always learning.
The intellectual side of it.
And then spiritual fitness, which I was actually really surprised, was music and art, and reading scripture, reading sacred reading, and church. I was just having this conversation with a friend where she was kind of like, well, what about you can find God in the mountains, you can find God in the sea. And it's like, yeah, you can, but eventually you do have to go to the gym just to work on your form, kind of in a controlled environment, kind of check in with your progress. And then other times during the week, go out in the mountains, go out to the ocean, whatever. But you need that community, you need that accountability, you need those, maybe if you're doing really specific athletic stuff, like having a program written to you by a coach, getting feedback from people who are more advanced than you is very important, and that community, so that you feel backed up, because it's going to get hard. There's going to be temptations. You're going to want to eat cake or go out and Taco Tuesday or whatever. But if you have friends at the gym saying like, hey man, it's okay that you relapse, we're here for you, like get back into, like, you need that. So that's why I think the gym was such a great gateway into me returning to church, because I was like, well, if I'm going to do this for my body, I have to do this for my soul too. Because otherwise, what's it all for?
Yeah. That's it. Again, I mean, we were talking about like parameters, right? Like it's funny. I think today in 2024, you point this out, right? People are there's certain things that we tend to have in our lives that we like, you know what? These things, these rules that we created, they apply, and I like them and I agree. But this other thing over here, let's get rid of the rules, right? With spirituality is what you were saying, right? Like, I can find God and I can find my spirituality and all these other things. It's just like, why rewrite the rules? Like in the physical, in the mental, there are rules, right? Like you can go to school, you can read books, you can expand yourself in all of these different things and in all these different ways. Same thing with the physical. You can go to the gym, you can work out. There's parameters, there's an understanding of how you go about and how you advance in these things. But with spirituality,
people put it on the back burner, don't even care about it at all.
Exactly. And like, I can do this any way I want to, right? No parameters, how I write it.
And then we wonder why there's a mental health crisis, or like crime, or the family breakdown,
Yep, exactly.
It's all connected.
Yeah. What do you ladies think?
She's hitting the mark. Absolutely. What you're saying.
Yeah, spiritual snaps, honestly.
Yeah. Do you guys feel that way in like for dance as well too? Do you think that's how would this take shape in dance, right? Because AI, it's like, well, I guess you can get AI eventually to come with new dance moves, right? Like,
AI dancers from Beyonce.
When we get holograms, that's when you guys are in trouble.
They're doing
Which
backflips.
they can't do. Isn't ABBA on tour right now? But like,
is it ABBA?
Oh yeah,
but it's
the
not
robots.
actually them.
Yep, it's over. The robots are taking
That's-
over.
I would be so mad if I paid $1,000 to see ABBA and they're just hologram people.
Yeah. We were talking about this recently, actually, with a couple of our dance friends, just like, how would AI affect the dance community? And I mean, obviously, if you're talking about social media, like I've already seen, AI in the form of dance, where it's like AI trees doing these really cool dances, or even AI people, you know, but it's not real. So in that sense, if you're talking about digitally, sure. But we were talking about how, kind of what you were saying, people are going to crave the joy, they're going to crave the human soul and spirit, they're going to crave live experiences, and that's where, you know, a human body, like a dancer, it's going to be needed. So it's a different, I guess, effect. I don't think the dance community is as scared of AI, just because it's, you know, the opportunity to be swallowed up by AI, I think, is a little more limited. But then again, we'll see.
Yeah.
It
The
hasn't
robots are
taken
coming
full
for you
effect.
guys too.
Yeah.
Not kidding. You know, no, that's a good point. Yeah, for sure. I think all these things are really similar. I think the spirit, like you said, is in and of itself a real thing that people experience, whether they believe it or not. Right? It's something beyond just the physical. It's something beyond the mental.
Yeah.
Or at least it's different, a different category. And so I think that actually exemplifies sort of what we were saying about the, you know, art in this category. It's like seeing a person and knowing, so to speak, that I have an impact, right? If I'm watching you in a live performance and I say, "Go Veronica," right? Like it'll make you smile, right? But an AI, if it did, it would be fake and I would know it. Right.
Yeah.
Like, and it's like, well, it's reacting to me. So that's real, but there's nothing necessarily real or something that I can connect to as a human being emotionally to it, because I don't know, it doesn't have the same capabilities.
It's like that
of
movie
doing it.
Her,
Yeah.
where he's like had a relationship with a robot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and too, like you were saying, like the more you do things with your hands and build and create and make, the happier you are. Like somebody that thinks, I want to go take a dance class, or I just want to go learn how to develop rhythm or movement in my body. I mean, you could watch an online tutorial, but you can't replicate that feeling of being in a classroom with a teacher present and other people in the room with you. Like the connection that happens in person in a live scenario, AI aside, you can't, you just can't create that online. So that experience too, I think, is gonna be heavily desired, especially in the, you know, the future we're discussing.
Yeah. And I think there's something about, we keep mentioning this, about working in with your hands, right? I think there's something about working and knowing that there's a possibility of failure.
Right.
Contrast to knowing that I can grow if I try, right? Or I can get better, right? And it seems to be a really important element. Mary was alluding to this, that is present in that brings satisfaction. If I do this thing, I get this outcome. This outcome may be hard to achieve, so let me figure out the life puzzle to figure out how to actually achieve it. When I achieve it, there's a response. I get a reward from it, right? And that is very important to the human experience, in my opinion, right? And so, yeah, that, I mean, it makes sense, right? Especially when it's something that's obvious, like dance, because that is a much more physical event. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. And too, it's such a human connector. Like it's not, I mean, dance is personal, but it's also very much based in community. Like dancing with other people. That's like how you build relationship. That's how you build understanding about the world and your relationship to other humans.
Right.
Dance is such a cool way to communicate with people. And like I said, it could be in a classroom, or it could be in the street. It could be in a live music event. Like it can happen anywhere.
Yeah.
And you can't do that sitting on your screen staring at people dancing.
Right.
Or anything, sitting on a screen. Get off the screens.
Yeah. And the spirit's connected to it, right? I think we were talking about like language, like in the parameters, like art is just, it communicates a language.
Yeah.
It's like when you see somebody that can't dance, you're just like, oh. Right? You're like, it's like, you know, man, that's shame.
It's like, what?
Right. But, but we immediately know, right?
Shameful.
Like,
I feel
other
ashamed
gifts.
of myself with my dance skills.
so we were talking about this.
No. Listen, if
Mary-
the heart is there, that's what matters. The technique
Yeah,
can
you
come
just have to
later.
be willing. Like if you just
Right.
allow yourself to look like a fool, it's way more fun.
The dumber you feel, the better you're
The
doing.
experience.
You have
Within
to
it-
fail. Yeah. Failure is so important.
Right. Isn't it funny how we name certain things? Like, you know, like at the drunk uncle. Like
Yes.
everybody knows what that looks like in your mind, the drunk uncle at the
Could you
wedding.
show
Like
us?
exactly. It's like I don't know if I'm capable of doing that.
5, 6, says
Yeah.
the sober uncle.
Did you have something, Allison? I wanted to hear your opinion on this as well too. Like any
Well, just listening to you talk about dance, I would just add that I love that it's an immediate connector with people. Like, you can read them in another way. It's a beautiful language, you know. You can connect with people that you may not have with just speaking to them right off the bat. You know, if you can dance with somebody first, then it's like, oh, we're kids again, you know. Let's just vibe out this way.
Yeah.
As far as what Mary's saying, more on like the spiritual level, I think it taps into all different forms of art. And with dance, I think I would be cautious of remembering why you're doing it, you know, because we lived in LA for 6 years in the dance scene. And it's like, we're all there because we know the joy that dance brings. And you really can't find that in a community, in a classroom. But sometimes you can get in it over your head, kind of like what she was saying, like in behind the scenes with like Disney and these other things that you did, or for Apple or whatever. It's like, what are the agendas, and, you know, what's the spirit really in that environment? And is it worth pushing to pursue something where you're going to be ultimately spiritually dissatisfied? You know, it's just so surrounded by a cloud of what I would say is Luciferianism. So, I mean, I think what you're tapping in on is super important too.
Yeah.
Can you explain that term, Luciferianism? Exactly what does that mean?
It's just self-worship instead of God worship. I saw a chick on TikTok actually put it so perfectly. It was like witch talk or whatever. She said, God tells you to believe in him, Satan tells you to believe in yourself, which was what I was doing in LA. I didn't know it was Satanism, but that's kind of the message of that city. And the other thing that Hollywood is based on is just they capitalize on that human joy. Like, they figured out how to take that and make a huge industry off of it, and that's what makes it dark. I don't like telling people, like, I was thinking about this earlier, like, to throw Disney completely out of your life. I mean, modern Disney, yeah, it's just straight up propaganda at this point, but there's something to, like, those classic Disney movies that we grew up with. That was kind of what made me want to be an artist initially. And as I got older and I was pursuing that industry and meeting these people, the thing that made Disney so special was that most of those movies were directed by, like, normal dads who loved their families. Like, the most memorable Disney characters were designed by dads who were just like, yeah, Ariel is based off of my daughter, Princess Jasmine is based off of my sister, Mulan is based off of like the director of Mulan. I met him. He was a super nice Christian dude with 5 daughters. And I was like, that's why that movie was so good. It was modern feminist movies are all written by women who hate men, but the most memorable, lovable female characters were written by men who love women. There's the love versus the hate. That's what we're missing nowadays. And I think that's what made Disney so successful. And the greedy, non-artistic people who run the show, they just kept taking it further and further and further, to the point that now there's no real heart and soul to it anyway. But it's like, that's what I try to focus in on. Like, it's sometimes really sad to see what people do with their God-given talents, but you could still admire them for what they are and take the good, leave the bad. So, yeah, I think I will let my kids watch old Disney movies for that reason, but it's also kind of it's kind of also sketchy now that I see, like, the subversion parts of it too that are so integrated into our psyches now that it's, like, not even weird. But looking back now, it's like, oh yeah, there are some messages in The Lion King that are actually very toxic, and we see that today. So, but that's just life, you know. The world is cursed.
I think there's a term that I'm seeing in a lot of podcasts. It's like facts versus feelings. I think when you think about feelings in art, it's expression, and it's expression based, right? And so it's more tied, I think, to what we're talking about with the spirit and, just your emotions being channeled in a way that you communicate, create creatively with other people that they can connect with because they've had some emotional attachment to it. I think music is the most obvious of all, like it's the most universal language, so to speak.
Right.
I would think like dance is as well too, in the visual art and putting pen to paper.
Yeah.
Everybody, you can understand it no matter where you are, right? Like if I draw, if you draw, you're the artist, not me. If you drew a bird, right? Like no matter what species, I can have never seen this species of bird before, but I know it's a bird, right?
Yeah.
And the color choice and all those things would express itself onto me, and I would relate to it, right? But this idea of the feeling, right? And I think when you look at the way that where the world is right now, it's very feeling based. We're chasing feeling and expression. So from one perspective, like you were saying, like you can appreciate the fact that we're using a medium of creativity to do things, but when it's perverted, it takes this weird turn, and it becomes the Disney movies. The difference is, but like the point that was a bar. What you said about old movies versus the new Disney movies, and so
Yeah.
it's really interesting to see and how that relates to art. And I think this is when you like originally was like, okay, we'll talk about like something like spiritual athleticism, right? It's hard to know sort of how the conversation will go, but I think you've done a beautiful job of being able to express it in such a way where it's just like we can again relate it back to culture, which then gets us back to asking the question of, okay, what about this is true?
Yeah.
Have we gone too far? What are the parameters? Are there parameters anymore? Right?
Yeah.
The guardrails are kind of removed in a sense, right? Because we've taken spirituality and creativity and feeling and expression, and we've sort of just taken it and done what we want with it without understanding the core of where it comes from and what
Yeah.
the purpose and meaning of it is, right? And that's when you start getting like AI taking over the financial portion of it, right? And all of these things that are happening as a result of it, right? I think when you said you talk about God and the difference between doing something for God and because of God, or doing something for yourself, I do think that is a very, very, very essential principle. I think especially from a Christian perspective, the scripture that comes to mind is when God calls Abraham. He says something to him very interesting. He says, Abraham, come out of the land of your father, come out of Ur, and I'll make your name great, right? And it's an interesting dichotomy in the Bible. It's an interesting parallel, right? Where there's only essentially one or two ways to live. You either live for God and do it for God, right? Like God's going to make my name great, or I'm desperately trying to make my own name great in the world, so to speak, right?
Become God.
And that's exactly what you were expressing there. So
Yeah.
yeah,
But since we can't become God, it's just kind of you spend your whole life just resisting God. And that's what people are doing now. Like there's no real, like atheism can't exist without theism, you know?
Yep.
So, and that struggle is just exhausting.
Yeah.
It's like once you just let go and be
Yeah.
like, all right, God, you're God. I am not. Things are a lot more relaxed, especially if you're a creative person. You just are more likely to struggle with perfectionism, which
Yeah.
is a God complex
Yeah.
at the end of the day, which was just wrecking my life at that point. And I see people being consumed by that too. So even though at first it was all fun and games, like the Luciferian spirituality is just, it's horrible. It's hell on earth. So I think that's like one of the ways you can escape from a vampire. Because, you know, vampires are very proud.
Yeah.
So if you want to escape from a vampire, you like take a handful of rice and throw it on the ground, and they have to count every single one.
Yeah.
And then you can run away. and that's why being an artist, before I knew God, being an artist was so horrible, because I was always trying to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
And it was just so mentally just destructive. And that's why I am so into religion now, because it's helping me repair my brain, literally. And I see it happening for other people too.
Yeah.
And especially with exploring and pursuing iconography, like there's a lot involved in that. There's a lot of prayer, structured prayer, and fasting and just kind of sanctifying your whole life, because it's such a precise process. Like, I'm still learning, but just doing the gold leaf, doing the straight lines, making sure that the saint's face is free from my pride and vices. That is, and the attacks that you get at the same time too, because when you're fasting and praying, you're kind of in like the desert, like the spiritual desert. Like, you've stripped away everything, and it's just you in kind of like this spirit world, which is why music and art being spiritual fitness. So when you're playing your instrument, you are spiritually strengthening yourself. So yeah. I don't know where I was going with that, but
no worries. I've been asked this question before, and I'm curious to know what you guys think. Do you think things are going to get better?
They're going to get
what
worse first.
Context.
Things have to get worse before
What's
they
going
get
on?
better. Like, things are still pretty good, at least here in the U.S. For other people, maybe not so much, but for the average Joe, it's kind of like this calm before the storm.
Obviously, better is a relative term, right? Depends on kind of what we mean exactly by better. Do we think that, like, people are going to be, like, let's just say, like, we were just like, do we think structure is going to come back? Like, in some
Structure? People's
in terms of,
hearts are
like,
going to have
family
to
structure
change.
or something like that, right? Like,
Yeah.
but what do you guys think?
I think
will
at
get
some
better?
point the pendulum does have to swing the other way. Like, we've come so far. Everything is backwards. It's kind of like we're living in the upside down. It's, and the family structure is being attacked, the nuclear family at least. And it's like this education system has completely crumbled. It feels more like an indoctrination kind of system. It just kind of seems like everywhere you turn, everything good is being brought down. So eventually, I mean, even now, I think after COVID especially, there's been a great awakening. It's like we're kind of looking under the rug and all the roaches are scattering. So I do think that people are waking up to what's going on and they're starting to care in a different way. And I would even advocate for like homeschooling. We were all homeschooling and, you know, we're here to tell the story.
Very cool. Idea.
Yeah. But to Mary's point, yeah, it probably will get worse. I mean, the writings are on the wall. They kind of tell you in plain sight.
Yeah.
But it's good and not good, but it's necessary.
There is
It's
hope.
like the story.
Yeah.
Like, things have to get worse before they get better.
Yeah.
Well,
Night is darkest before the dawn.
We know what side wins ultimately. If we're talking spiritually, we know who wins. So it's like you can still remain hopeful. You don't have to let it get you down. You don't have to let it give you this negative spirit. There's a lot of negativity permeating through our media and our culture. It's like kind of like that scene in Lord of the Rings when Frodo's on his way to Mordor and they look down in the river and all those green, ghoulish spirits are like looking up at them wanting to suck their soul. And Frodo gets kind of enticed and falls into it. And then, you know, trying to purify yourself and ask God for genuine help, you can remember to look up and you'll see that hand that you can pull yourself out of that gunk. Like, whew, I can breathe.
Right.
God is in control. Whatever comes, give me the strength to handle it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, on the topic of hope, remembering that through this awakening, how many people are stepping up, and that, you know, there's so many individuals that are taking a stand and are thinking differently and questioning the norms or what we've been told is the norm, and coloring outside the lines that, you know, we were kind of given. And on the Lord of the Rings, just thinking about the last scene in the Two Towers when Sam has his monologue, that there's still some good left in this world, and it's worth fighting for. Oh, it gives me chills every time. Give it up for Sam Wise.
Every time I watch it,
well up in my eye, because I'm like, that is so true. Tolkien, he knew what he was doing, what world he was creating. Because the good is worth fighting for. What else is there to do here?
Right.
You just let the darkness swallow you? That's not going to be our story. Like, not people like us in this room or people listening to your podcast. Like, those are the people that are like, wait, I can make a difference. You know, I can sharpen my tools in my mind and my spiritual fitness. I can force myself to sit down for 15 minutes every morning and pray or meditate or serve the community in some way. Or just love your neighbor or pray for an enemy. Like, that's real worship in the day-to-day actions and the day-to-day choices you have, like love or fear, sin or the cross. So just having hope in that this is just a great big epic, that life is like a movie and you get to choose. Are you the hero or a victim that needs the rescuing? I mean, we all need rescuing to some degree, but we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. It ain't on us.
Yeah, for sure. In your art forms, how do you think that you're helping to inspire this hope? Like, is there something that you're doing? You're doing iconography, right? So, like, does that, like, from your perspective?
Yeah, so far I've done 3 icons for 3 different people, or I'm in the process of working on my 3rd. And when I finish the pieces, it's like I'm bonded with the person who has it in a really deep spiritual way. Like it's indescribable how it's like a spiritual journey. It's like I climb a mountain. Like my first painting was Saint Therese. She was someone I really loved as a little girl, and I ignored her after, like, once I got to a certain age. I was like, religion's stupid, God is lame. Blah. And then when I did that painting, it was like I reconnected with a part of my childhood and healed a lot of wounds. And then the person I gave it to kind of had their own experience too that we're kind of like connected with in that way. And then when I did my second commission, it was like this saint that no one really knew about. And now it's like she has a new life again, and that she's put out in the internet for other people to see. And one of them, the person who I sold that to, he sent me a picture of a comment that he got from an Irish person, because she was an Irish saint. He was like, this, as an Irish person, like, this is so magical and it reminds me of the Book of Kells. And I was like, that's exactly what I wanted to do. Like, kind of like revitalize that. So
Direct verification.
Yeah.
In a sense. Right?
Yeah. So even though it's just like little things there, I feel like icons say more than words could ever say, and ground you in a way that's so different than the imagery that we see on screens. So I don't yet really know what that means or where it's going to go, but so far it's helped me grow and helped people who looked at it grow. And yeah, I'm really excited about this journey.
Yeah. I think.
I guess with dance, the way that it becomes or just inherently is spiritual to me is just how it connects us, yes, with one another, but also with God himself, because dance is so much, it's just like play. And it's not something that, like, with a painter, it's like you have your paint and it's on the paper and you are separate from the art. Then as soon as you put color down, it's like you and the art are separate. Dance, like the art and the artist never separate. As you dance, you are the art. And that's like God, and his creation. He is creating and he is the creation and he's in all of it. So it's very spiritual, I think, in that sense. And then on a more, I think, based in society, it can become spiritual with how you use it today, modern day. I think it's been very distorted and misused in a over-sexualized way. And now it's almost like common whenever you tell somebody you're a dancer that, ooh, what kind? You get the drunk uncle response. You a dancer?
Yeah.
And you're like,
Sit down.
relax. Ballet. Not what you got to say.
Point, in fact.
Yeah. So I think using it today for something other than just the sexual gaze is one way to take a spiritual stance in an artistic way. Just like, this is not just for a primal desire. It can be very technical and work your mind, your emotions, your physical, all of it. And to just uphold that this is an art form, that this is therapeutic, this is self-expression, this is a God-given gift. And now speak with that in mind versus this is going to get me likes, or this is going to get me attention, or it's going to fill the void in my heart, or the brokenness. It's like, rather than always creating from a broken place, how can your art heal you and others, and kind of start working from there, and just be in continuous prayer and conversation with God in the meantime. Like, all right, what do you want to say through me? I'm just your vessel. Or was it in Isaiah, like, here I am, Lord, send me? Or Luke, I don't know. You got the names down. But just, I think art can be spiritual from that sense. Like, how can I be your vessel today?
Yeah.
How can I be your soldier in times like this?
Yeah.
Tough act to follow.
I know. Good luck, first Mary.
I know.
Veronica.
I agree with everything they said. Piggybacking off of that. Well, you really did. You hit a lot of points there. So what came to my mind was also just the aspect of teaching dance, and specifically to children. There's such a beautiful spiritual aspect to that too. Because like once you're really working with a kid, for a lot of them, it's implementing discipline that they don't have maybe in their regular life.
Very good point.
And it's almost parental in some ways, and you have that authority off the bat because you're the teacher, but also learning how to befriend a child too. It's a beautiful balance. And I feel like it's great practice for like parenting someday, especially when you get to do it with all the different ages. You're like, ooh, I handle this completely differently with the 8-year-olds than I do the high schoolers, And when you're teaching, you also have so much opportunity to also share the real world with them, and also Christ in your life and what that might look like, and just being real with them, just being honest. Dance is a great leveler. You can have a super brat or like a super sweet child, but like on the dance floor, it's anybody's game, So I guess that's what I would add to this piece.
Yeah. Do you guys feel like you have to actively, when you're practicing or you're dancing or you're performing or you're doing a piece of art for someone, that you have to compete, like that you have to combat the hypersexualization in dance or the propaganda that's creeping its way into art, whether it be telling a story or just a static image? Do you feel like you have to combat that in some way as you're creating, or you're practicing for a performance, or you're drawing something, right? Like, are you like constantly in your mind, like, okay, well, I want, because the purpose of doing it, part of the purpose is to share it.
Yeah.
Right. And so, well, culture today, sharing it with the most amount of people means I should do it this way, or I should do this. Right. And so as a creative, you're constantly like having to fight that thought, because I think that is obviously what creeps into people's creativity when they're doing something. And then that's what you obviously see in the film, on the page. Right. And how do you feel that, and how do you go against that?
Yeah. I feel like for me, doing art, I'm combating myself a lot now. Before, it was kind of more like, I'm doing this to try to get a job and appease to the beast so that I can get health insurance and stuff. But now it's more like, how do I get my own agenda out of my subconscious so that it doesn't contradict the image that I'm trying to make? And that's where spiritual fitness comes in again, like dying to yourself, I guess. Like ego death was the big thing in LA. But from a Christian point of view, it's like, just, what is it that Paul said? I died so that Christ could live through me. Paraphrase. But that is something I feel like I have to do every day. And that's what I really love about the Eastern Christianity, because I've started doing the Jesus prayer for the first time, and that's a lot different than like the Western way of praying. Like with the rosary, there's mental prayer, visualization is very encouraged, whereas with the Jesus prayer, it's like no visualization. It's like super discouraged. And at first I was like, why? Like, because a lot of the best saints in our church are like, mental prayer is absolutely essential to get to heaven and be a saint or whatever. But in the East, it's like super discouraged. And I'm kind of at a point where I'm like, is there a way to reconcile the two? Because imagination is very important, but at the same time, you can achieve a balance by trying to not imagine anything at all.
Yeah.
Especially for a creative person, like we're very visual, like we're always thinking of things, we always have ideas, we're always like we're very easily visually stimulated. So having parameters, like Christ parameters, in trying to control your imagination and just silence it and just be in God's presence. Like that is what I'm trying to do right now to keep my art from being like contaminated with me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So
that's tough to do for sure. Because I think a part of you, in essence, is like if you see somebody doing something creative, in essence, it's like if you were to create a painting and you were to sign it, right? The reason for signing it is to let them know that it came from you, right? So that's kind of like built into.
Yeah, except with icons, we're technically not supposed to sign them.
Right.
So
yeah,
that's another thing that I'm getting used to.
Yeah.
Because there's so much of art before used to be all about the artist, whereas ancient stories and fairy tales and art, like you don't know who it was. It was like you were participating in the image, whereas now it's like, oh, that's a Jackson Pollock and this symbolizes his alcoholism and has nothing to do with me, you know? Now it's like, but with like stories like, I don't know, The Little Mermaid, it's like you don't want to think about the creator. You want to just be in the story.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. What about for you ladies? As far as the having to keep your mind focused on,
Yeah. I would say like in a dance space, because it is so heavily connected to and related to music, because it's not often that you're just like choreographing to silence sometimes, but
in the confines of your own home, I'm sure.
Right.
Is there shower dance? There's shower singing. Is there shower dance?
Yeah, for sure. I would say so. I mean, it's like if you go to a waterfall, like it's like a smaller version of that.
Or those videos online where it's like David Bowie dancing to no music, or High School Musical with no music.
Oh my gosh. Bet on it.
Yeah, but I guess, you were saying like combating the over-sexualization and just the world today, like taking the responsibility to choose what kind of music, first of all, you are creating too. Because, a lot of lyrics today, especially on the radio or just popular music, they all usually have a degrading message at the core, or it's just somehow promoting the culture of death if you follow what they're preaching to the end. So making the conscious choice to not create to that music, because your moves will tend to follow, especially if you, kind of create in a lyrical way. And then two, like, I think on a technical level, upholding beauty and form and skill and tradition in the art form, because a lot of it today is that recycled TikTok looking, repeated,
Fortnite moves.
Boring. Yeah. Essentially forgettable.
Moves, yes.
Yeah, essentially forgettable movement. Yeah, and I'm not saying like death to all of it, but if you're going to call yourself an artist, like ask yourself, what are you bringing to the table? What is the purpose of what you're creating? What value at the end of the day is this piece going to have on an audience or just on one person's life? And again, if it has that, this is for myself, then you're not really, you could die tomorrow. And what was that all for? God gave you a gift. What did you do with it? And when you're on your deathbed, or say you're already gone and you're looking back on your life, you don't want to have that regret of like, man, I could have done so much more.
All I did was Fortnite moves.
Yeah. And I do think God has a sense of humor, but he is going to be like, bro.
Yeah.
And you're going to be like,
yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah, you have a point.
Yeah. You said something really interesting. I think we mentioned earlier, you said when people ask you like to define art, you kind of like it's kind of like difficult to do. Like,
I like how Tolstoy said it. He's like, there's three things that make an artist. One is you have to be technically skilled in your craft. 2, you have to say something new. And 3, you have to have a moral relationship with your subject matter. And that's a part of the journey, is figuring out like what your subject matter even is and how are you going to say it in a way that is different. Because like with my artistic journey, I'm kind of finally gotten to a point where I'm like, I want to paint that, but life is really short. Somebody else already did it better. And I need to focus on like what I'm good at instead of trying to, like, one of our friends was like, could you like paint the crucifixion of St. Peter? And I was like, one, you can't afford that. That'll take forever. Two, I'm not like spiritually there, you know, to paint a crucifixion scene. I'm still working from like cute unicorn pretty faces to more dark spiritual matter. So like accepting my strengths and weaknesses and recognizing like there's only so much time in life to do the things you want to do and to focus on like what God's individual unique plan for you is. And I think that's, unless you're walking with God, it's very hard to align yourself to your destiny.
I was going to say too as well, I think, and I was going to make an attempt also to try to define it based off of something you said, like Trick. I was like, I think I have a definition for art that might work. It might fit your definition too, what you just said. So hear me out. All right.
Drum roll.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right. So I would say art is a creative expression connected to purpose.
It's beautiful. Creative expression connected to purpose.
Right. Because something you said, right? If you are creating something, if you're doing a TikTok dance, you're just copying. Not really, you're not connected to the purpose when you do it.
Right.
Right. The creator probably could have been, but you're not.
Right.
Right. So I wouldn't say that you're a dance artist in a sense, right? Like you're just kind of just doing something that you saw.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and then the purpose in that sense would be, for the person copying and regurgitating, it would just usually be for the purpose of fame.
Exactly.
So there's no soul in that.
Exactly.
And again, it's serving the self.
Exactly.
Versus hopefully, the creator who's like, I'm experiencing joy when I've created this dance, or I'm experiencing healing on some kind of level when I've created this piece. And then too, I would just say for women especially, but men as well in the dance world, to find more than just the purpose of being somebody's sexual gaze in a moment, because that's so fleeting. And again, what is that feeding society? Is that serving society in any healthy, beneficial way? And don't believe the lies that you're told that it's empowerment. Right. If I hear one more woman say that taking off her clothes is empowering,
it's a whole other topic.
You have to take your clothes off to be heard.
Yeah, think about the great.
You have completely given your power away at that point. You should be able to keep the clothes on and still feel like I deserve the respect in the room right now. Because of the way you carry yourself. And when you just lay it all out on the floor, you immediately are saying, I'm not even for sale. Actually, I'm free.
Yeah.
And then ask yourself, who is that going to attract? Yeah. Like the stand-up, respectable men and women, or the pigs that are like, free meat, clearance sticker,
right.
And the value, the value of a human being, and a woman especially, is priceless. So to carry yourself like that.
Well, it goes to show you, I think, as a whole, especially with us women, we have forgotten our worth in a lot of ways. And that's very prevalent in the dance world and dance culture. It's very loud there, So it's like, and it comes from the music too, the degradation of women in music especially, but men too, it really does affect us. It affects, what we put in our brains with music. You start to just subconsciously think like, oh, this is okay. This is normal. And we wonder why, crime is increasing, and, we're not learning how to read anymore because the words we're hearing aren't even proper English or grammatically correct, Right. I mean, it just...
The number of predators online grow every day, and pedophilia is becoming such a huge issue that people don't even parent their own children anymore to say, actually, it's wrong for little girls to be twerking online or to be pumping, their chest. And that's weird. And the fact that we've lost touch with that as a society is so concerning. Like, bring guidance back, bring value back, and teach that, each human soul is precious and deserves to be treated as such, and to teach them to carry themselves as such.
Yeah. That is a part 3. We got to do a list of things we need to talk about, because that is a massive. I'm glad you guys said it too. come back and tune in because they're definitely coming back for part 3. We got a whole series coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, called The Hubers. It's gonna be this series, The
Meet
Hubers.
the
are in
Hubers.
this
The Hubers and my sisters.
Yeah. Final thoughts. Again, thank you guys so much for coming. This has been an absolutely fantastic. You're so talented, well spoken. There's sometimes when you are speaking and people are like, "This you're so polished. Is this rehearsed?" Like if people
I was a tour guide in college. I had a lot of public speaking practice.
right, but you speak very eloquently.
Thank you.
And very in your thought process on this is clear, right, and purposeful, and that comes across very well. So
Holy Spirit and interesting questions.
yeah. And the ladies who were going to participate but not participate, but then we got them to participate. Again, you guys are so talented and also so eloquent, and you're in profound and all the rest of it, and wise. And again, we have to have a series. I might just let you guys just talk and just create another channel.
Meet the Hubers. Keeping up with the Hubers.
Because I'm truly blown away. But final thoughts. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
So,
Yeah, honestly,
hourglasses.
wouldn't be the same without you setting all of this up, inviting us over, feeding us, asking
Marco's
great
Pizza,
questions.
Not sponsored. Should be.
And thank you for using your skills and talents to provide environments like this where conversations are easily had and the real stuff, the real important stuff is being discussed. And
Safe space.
yeah, all in love, all in truth.
That's right.
In the seeking. Yeah, it's definitely a beautiful, safe, comfortable place.
Thank you. I appreciate
That
it.
rhymed.
So we'll go around. Last final thoughts on the topic. Anything we discuss, some takeaway, something you want the people to know.
I want the
Whatever it
people to
is.
know. People,
Then we'll go and we'll
I
end
want
with
you to
Mary.
know that you are smart, you are kind, you are important, but for real. Just if you feel lost, start with your hands, as Mary was saying. And whatever it is that brought you joy as a child, maybe even if you've been turned away from it for a long time, or you've sworn it off, or you were heartbroken by some type of rejection, whether that came from a parent or a teacher or a job or an interview or audition, whatever it may be, don't let the world tell you that you shouldn't paint or you shouldn't sing or you shouldn't write or you shouldn't play or a musical instrument or dance or, act or whatever it might be. Just start with your hands, start small, woodworking, and every day dedicate a little bit of time for you and the creator in the act of creating, and experience some joy again, because the world needs more joy. That's my word for 2024.
Amen.
That's crazy. I literally was sitting here thinking about joy. Like
Then it's the sign.
2024. Maybe that's our word for the year.
It is.
Yeah, truly.
January 2024, I said, my word is joy.
On that note, it is true though. We should be choosing joy, and we have to remember that joy is a choice, just like it's a choice to love the people in your life, to actually try and obtain unconditional love. Can you give that to someone or everyone to a certain degree? I think that would be the highest level to achieve. Can you love everyone in your life, even those who wrong you? And that's, man, what I need to work on this year is just like the act of forgiveness. It is such a beautiful, powerful, peaceful tool to implement in your life. Just forgive.
Yeah.
People will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. So really try and choose joy in your life and then share that with others, because the more you can give to other people, the more that will return to you. That's just like the laws of nature, that's just so true. But yeah, any final thoughts would just be to love those around you and love yourself, but not in a cheesy woke way. Like, love yourself, but like actually like, okay, God, you made me. Let me not, critique and hate on this creature so much, like, how can I love myself? How can I be my best friend? My older sister, my mother, my younger sister, all, but trusting God in the process.
Amen.
Is how I would feel.
Yeah.
Not to steal but that reminded me of a quote from a saint. I don't remember who it was, but he said, if you want God to hear you, don't start by like the list of things you want or like to spend so much time in prayer. Start by praying for your enemies and you'll immediately get his attention.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Anyways,
Speed dial.
on the topic of forgiveness.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's like going into the dirtiest rooms of your soul and cleaning them out first. And that's like loving your enemies. Yeah, love, joy, and courage. Like, don't be afraid. It's really easy to get sucked into fear. It seems like everything is so crazy and all hope is lost, and we're just going to hell in a handbasket. But at the same time,
Keep it southern.
great times call, or desperate times call for desperate measures. And there's never been a better time to be a hero. Like, I just like to see life like in a video game kind of way, and getting XP. And there are going to be times where it's just, you feel like you're just fighting the same boss over and over and over, and you just keep dying. But you know, you're still here. You just get back up and keep going, and just trust that God is going to guide you to your destiny, and it's just going to be so beautiful and wonderful and worth it in the end. And this is your story. This is your life. Make the most of it, and you are loved, and just keep positive.
Wow. And when the sun shines, it will shine out the clearer, Mr. Frodo.
Yes.
The references.
Starts playing Lord of the Rings in the background.
Oh my gosh. I might have to. I might have to put it in there.
Editing team, can you
You guys
take care
made
of that?
inspired.
Thank you all.
You guys are brilliant. Seriously, I'm blown away. Thank you guys so much. And thank you guys. Thank you, team, for coming, for joining us. Obviously, come back. We will be here. We will get you guys more content. These ladies will return if they will have it. But
Yeah.
signing off. Make sure you comment. Let us know what you think. End of the podcast, but the eternal never ends. See you guys next time.
Amen.
Bye.